I won $54 million on a Tuesday morning in November. I was sitting in my car outside a gas station, scratching a lottery ticket I almost didn't buy, and my whole world changed in about 30 seconds. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at those numbers. And the first thought that came into my head wasn't about a house or a car or vacation. The first thought was about my family. About every time they looked at me like I was nothing. About every holiday dinner where someone made a comment about my job or my apartment or my life choices, and I thought, before I tell a single soul, I want to know one thing. If I still had nothing, would any of them show up for me? If you enjoy emotional and dramatic stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to Francisko's Stories. Hit that button now so you never miss a new one. My name is Daniel. I'm 38 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the family disappointment. Not because I was a bad person, not because I hurt anyone, just because I didn't fit the mold they had built for me in their heads. My older brother Marcus became an engineer. My younger sister Priya married a doctor. And me. I worked in a warehouse for 11 years, managing inventory, loading trucks, doing the kind of work that keeps the world running but never gets any applause. I had a small apartment on the east side of the city. I drove a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked side mirror. I didn't own property, I didn't have a portfolio. And at every single family gathering, those facts were quietly, sometimes loudly, used against me. It started early. I remember being 24, sitting at my mother's kitchen table for Thanksgiving, and my uncle leaning across the turkey and saying, "So Daniel, when are you going to do something with your life?" My mother didn't defend me. She just looked down at her plate. Marcus laughed a little. Priya changed the subject. That was how it always went. Someone took a shot and everyone else just let it land. By the time I was 30, I had grown used to a certain kind of silence from them. The kind of silence that says we love you, but we're embarrassed by you. My mother would call every few weeks, and our conversations were short. She'd ask about work. I'd say fine. She'd mention what Marcus was building or where Priya had traveled, and then there would be this pause, this empty space, where a compliment from me should have been, but never was. I tried for a long time to earn their respect. I took an online business course. I started a small side venture repairing electronics out of my apartment. I even looked into going back to school at 33. Every time I brought one of these things up at a family dinner, the reaction was the same. Polite, distant, "That's nice, Daniel," delivered with the same enthusiasm you'd give a child who showed you a crayon drawing. The worst was 3 years before I won the lottery. I'd saved up enough to buy a used van and start a small moving company. Just me and 2 guys I trusted. It was going okay. Not amazing, but steady. I called Marcus to tell him I was proud. I thought maybe this time, finally, he'd see something in me worth celebrating. He said, "A moving company? Dan, you're almost 40. Don't you think it's time to think about stability?" I didn't say anything back. I just said, "Yeah, maybe you're right," and hung up. I sat on my couch for a long time after that. I wasn't angry exactly. I was just tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of hoping for something that never arrives. That was the version of me who sat in that gas station parking lot holding a lottery ticket worth $54 million. I didn't cash it that day. I went home, put it in a sandwich bag, and placed it in the back of my freezer behind a bag of peas. I sat on my bed and I made a list, not of things I wanted to buy, a list of the people in my life and what I honestly believed they would do if I called them right now and said I was struggling. My mother, I wasn't sure. She loved me, I knew that, but she had a way of getting overwhelmed by problems and disappearing into herself. Marcus, I was almost certain he'd offer advice instead of help, a lecture about the choices that had led me here. Priya, she'd be sympathetic on the phone but busy in real life. She had 2 kids, a full schedule, a husband who quietly thought of me as a cautionary tale. My cousin Gerald probably wouldn't answer. My Aunt Helen, she'd pray for me. My neighbor, a woman named Rose, who was 63 years old and had lived across the hall from me for 4 years, she'd probably bring me food. That was the list. And looking at it, I felt something clarify inside me. I'd spent years wondering why I felt so alone inside a family that technically showed up to holidays. And looking at that list, I understood. It wasn't that they hated me, it was that they had quietly decided I was not worth the effort. I decided to find out for certain. I called Marcus first. I kept my voice low and a little strained. I told him things had gone badly. I said one of my business partners had taken money from our account and I was short on rent by about $1,200. I said I was sorry to ask. I knew it was uncomfortable, but I didn't know who else to call. There was a pause. Then he said, "Dan, I've told you before that the moving business was risky. Look, money is tight for us right now too. The renovation on the house ran over budget." He paused again. "Have you thought about talking to a financial advisor? Getting some structure around your money?" I said I understood. He said, "I'll keep you in my prayers." I said thank you and hung up. The renovation on his 4-bedroom house had apparently run over budget. He was in his prayers. I waited 2 days and called my mother. I told her the same story. Rent was short. I was embarrassed to ask. I just needed a small bridge until I sorted things out. She made a sound, a low hum, the sound she always made when something made her uncomfortable. "Oh, Daniel, I just don't have that kind of money right now." She did have that kind of money. I knew she did. She had told me only a month before that she'd gotten a return on some savings account. "Maybe you should look into one of those community assistance programs, or talk to your brother." "I talked to Marcus," I said. Another pause. "I'm sure things will work out. You always land on your feet." That was it. That was the full depth of her support. Priya was next. She didn't even let me finish the sentence. "Daniel, I want to help. I really do, but things are insane right now. The kids have activities every single weekend. Kevin's working double shifts. We're trying to close on a refinance. I literally cannot add one more thing to my plate right now. I'm sorry, I really am. Can we talk next week?" I said, "Sure." We never talked next week. Gerald didn't answer. I left a voicemail. He never called back. A week later, I saw he had posted a video of himself at a steakhouse restaurant celebrating some minor work promotion. He had found time for that. Aunt Helen texted me a Bible verse. I appreciated the thought. I really did. But it doesn't cover rent. I gave it another few days. I sat with the weight of what I was learning. I wasn't surprised, not exactly. But there's a difference between suspecting something and having it confirmed. Every unreturned call, every polite excuse, every lecture disguised as concern, it settled into me like cold water. These people who had looked at me my whole life like I was failing them, when I actually needed them, they had nothing to give. Not money, not time, not even a real conversation. I cried one night. Not from sadness exactly. It was more like grief. Grieving the family I had wanted them to be. The version of my brother who would drive over and bring groceries and sit with me and say, "We'll figure this out." That version didn't exist. It had never existed. I had just refused to see it. And then there was Rose. I didn't call Rose as part of my test. She wasn't on my list because I didn't think of her as part of my family world. She was just my neighbor, this quiet older woman who grew tomatoes on her balcony and left notes on my door about packages that had been delivered. She knocked on my door on a Thursday evening. I opened it, and she was standing there holding a covered dish. She said she'd made too much soup. She always said she made too much soup. She handed it over and started to turn away, and then she stopped. She looked at me carefully. "You doing okay?" she asked. "You seem like something's weighing on you." I don't know why I told her. Maybe because she asked without any agenda. Maybe because I was tired of carrying it alone. I told her that things were tight, that I'd asked some family members for help and it hadn't gone the way I hoped. She nodded slowly. She said, "Wait here." She came back 3 minutes later with an envelope. Inside was $300 in cash. She said, "This isn't charity. You can pay me back whenever, but you should have it now because you need it now." I tried to refuse it. She held up one hand and shook her head. "Don't make it complicated," she said. "That's what people do for each other." And then she patted my arm once and went back to her apartment. I stood in my doorway for a long time after that. $300 from a woman living on a fixed income and a small pension. $300 she could not easily spare, given without hesitation, without a lecture, without a list of my past failures as context for why she wasn't sure I deserved it. That was the moment the whole experiment cracked open for me. Because here's what I understood standing there. My family had money. My family had resources. What they didn't have was the will to use any of it on me. Rose had barely enough, and she gave without thinking twice. The difference between them had nothing to do with bank accounts. It had everything to do with character. I took the next week to think about what I wanted to do. I had been careful to tell no one about the lottery ticket still sitting in my freezer. I had consulted a lawyer quietly, a man I found through an online search who specialized in lottery winners, and I had set up a trust. I was protected. I was ready. And now I knew what I needed to know. I decided to tell them, but I decided to do it together, in one room, so I would have to say it only once. I invited my mother, Marcus, and Priya to dinner at a restaurant downtown. A nice one, nicer than we'd ever been to as a family. I told them I had some news. They came, probably curious, maybe a little guilty. I could see it in how they greeted me. A little too warm, a little too cheerful, the way people act when they sense they may have made a mistake but don't want to name it yet. We ordered food, we made small talk, and then I set a folder on the table. A few weeks ago, I said, I told each of you that I was in financial trouble, that I needed help with rent. I want you to know that wasn't true. They looked at each other. I won the lottery in November, I said. $54 million. And before I claimed it, I wanted to understand something. I wanted to know what each of you would do if I had nothing. The silence at that table was unlike anything I had ever heard. My mother's face went through about 6 emotions in 4 seconds. Marcus put his fork down. Priya's hand went to her mouth. I'm not saying this to hurt you, I said, and I meant it. I'm saying it because I spent 38 years being made to feel like I was worth less than each of you. And I wanted the truth. Not the version of yourselves you show at holidays. The real truth. And now I have it. Marcus started to speak. He said my name, then stopped. He tried again. He said, I didn't know. That's exactly it, I said. You didn't know. You thought I had nothing. And that's when you told me money was tight and to look into a financial advisor. Priya was crying. She said she was sorry. She said she had been so caught up in her own life, so overwhelmed, and that she knew it wasn't an excuse, but she wanted me to understand she did love me. I told her I knew she loved me. I told all of them that. Love wasn't the question. The question was what love actually looked like when it had to cost something. My mother didn't say much. She looked old sitting there. I felt a sadness for her that surprised me. Not anger, just sadness. I think she knew in that moment exactly how she had made me feel over the years, and there was no covering it up with a change of subject anymore. We didn't finish the meal. They left one by one, each of them carrying something they'd have to sit with alone. The next morning I went across the hall and knocked on Rose's door. She answered in her housecoat, holding a cup of tea, and looked at me with that calm, steady expression she always had. I told her the truth. All of it. The lottery, the test, what I had learned. And I told her what I wanted to do. Her eyes got wide when I said the number, but she shook her head. She said, Daniel, that's too much. I said, Rose, you gave me everything you could when you thought I had nothing. That's not something I can put a price on, but I'd like to try. I paid off the remaining mortgage on her apartment. She owned it outright now, no more monthly payments. I set up an account that would cover her medical expenses for the rest of her life, and I left her with enough that she would never have to count anything again. She cried. We both did. She hugged me in her doorway for a long time. She smelled like chamomile tea and the tomato plants from her balcony. I'm not going to tell you I cut my family off completely. Life is not a clean story. My mother and I still talk. It's different now, quieter, more honest. There's less pretending on both sides. Marcus reached out several times in the months after the dinner. Some of those conversations went somewhere real, some didn't. Priya and I have had long phone calls, and a few of them have been the most honest we have ever been with each other. I don't know yet what those relationships become. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not closing the door either. What I did do was move. I bought a house, a real one, with a yard and a kitchen with counter space and a guest room that actually has a bed in it. I grew my small moving company into something larger, hired good people, treated them right, paid them what the work was worth. I gave to a few charities I believe in. I lived, finally, like someone who deserved to take up space in the world. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, I think about that moment in the gas station parking lot, the 30 seconds that changed everything. And I think about how strange it is that the $54 million didn't teach me the most important thing. Rose did. With $300 in a bowl of soup and 4 words, that's what people do. That's what people do for each other. I spent almost 4 decades feeling like I wasn't enough, like the people who were supposed to love me had made a quiet decision that I didn't quite make the cut, and I thought that winning the lottery would fix that feeling, that money would finally buy me the thing I had always wanted, to be seen as worthy. But you can't buy that, and you can't force it out of people who have already decided you don't have it. What you can do, what I finally learned to do, is find the people in your life who see you clearly, without the money, without the success, without any of the things the world uses to rank us. Find the people who bring you soup when you look sad, who hand you an envelope without making it complicated. Those people are rare. They are more valuable than $54 million. Protect them, take care of them, and be that person for someone else when you get the chance, because in the end, that's the only thing that actually matters.